Hello everybody, welcome back to another video here at DFD Mastery. If this is the first time you are here, welcome. Here at DFD Mastery, we understand how frustrating it can be if you can't find discounted real estate deals, because that's what it takes to be successful. And it doesn't have to be that way. You can consistently find discounted properties and make an absolute fortune in real estate investing. So that's what we focus on, helping you understand. If you want to learn more about how to exactly find discounted deals, how we find discounted deals, you can check out my free webinar. There's a link in the show notes. You can check that out. I'll look forward to seeing you there live. It's dfdmastery.com. Register for the webinar and I'll see you there. But in today's video, we're actually going to go into depth on a question that I received from one of my followers. So Victoria reached out to me and she asked me a great question. She said, I have a quick question. She has, her and her spouse, they have full-time jobs, and they have a house that's more than halfway paid off, but they want to avoid the 20% down to buy a real estate investment property. So it sounds like they're trying to buy rentals, and they're trying to avoid putting 20%, even up to 30% down. The reason that she's worried about the 20 to 30% down is she's trying to get traditional financing from a financial institution to buy a rental property. So if you go to buy your primary resident house, if you're going to buy a house for yourself, you're going to pay anywhere between no money down to 10% down to buy a house. If you get FHA financing, a lot of times it's like 3 to 3.5%. If you get conventional financing, it's about 5%. And so, if that's your strategy to go buy a house for yourself, it's very little down. But she's wanting to get those same terms as for a loan, same interest rates and everything, and only put that amount down, not 20% to 30%. But if you go to a bank and say, hey, I want to buy a rental or a secondary property, the bank's rules are you have to put more money down because in their minds it's more risk than your primary home. So the question is, how do you get rental properties and avoid throwing so much money down and leveraging debt better? So there's two strategies that I have used, two strategies that I think are the very best. These strategies, depending on your personal situation, may not work for you. So that was the question. So the first strategy is moving into the house. So my wife Karen is actually behind the camera. So our very first rental property, we moved into it. So some of you may have kids, and moving into a rental property may not be the best option, but I wanted to get a duplex. And so you can have a primary residence loan up to 4 units. So you could buy a 4-plex or smaller as a primary residence. Confirm all of this with your loan officer. Some finance institutions may have different rules, but I'm going to give some rules on a generic sense, okay? So what we did is we found a duplex at a good price. This was clear back in 2011. We purchased this duplex. We actually got a grant from the city where we paid zero money down. So we actually bought the duplex for $60,000, and I got $5,000 down for free from the government. And we moved into this rental property. It was really beat up. I had to fix it up quite a bit. But we lived in one side and rented the other. My monthly payments on that thing were like $450 or so, and I rented the other side for about $700 a month. So we were doing very well. Then what we did from there is I refinanced some money out because we had so much equity in the house once I fixed it up, and then I bought another property as a primary residence. So I had my debt to income was good because I had rent income coming into that property, and then we bought another one. So as a primary residence, I had to move into that next one and keep that house. So Karen and I have moved quite a few times to build a rental portfolio because I started off as a window cleaner. I didn't have a lot of money. I didn't have a lot of cash to be able to put down on my next properties. And so if your situation doesn't allow you to move from house to house, and you have kids and you're worried about changing schools and their friends and those kinds of things, and that's not an option, there is a second option for you. So we don't use that strategy anymore because we have children, we're a little bit more established, and so our personal situation, we don't use that strategy. So the first strategy, to recap, is to move from house to house, buying primary residence loans and avoiding that down payment. The second strategy is where you source the deals with different financing. So the financial institutions are going to make the rules. And so if you want to get their loans, you have to follow their rules. And if you don't like their rules, you have to find move arounds. So if you're avoiding that 20 to 30% down, what you can do is get financing from someone else. So you can buy a house from someone, whether it's seller finance, or you get a loan, like a hard money loan from someone else that requires zero money down. It's just higher interest rates and maybe like a 1-year balloon. Or you can borrow money from a private investor. And so I've done all three of these strategies. So once you get that loan, you can then go immediately to a financial institution and say, I would like to refinance this property. And there's rules on the refinance. If you refinance a loan immediately, they're going to want to have about 20% equity on that property. So if it appraises for $100,000, they're probably only going to want to lend you about $80,000. But if you only owe $70,000, you might even be able to cash out some of that money. So you might be thinking, well, how do I find seller finance deals? How do I find someone that wants to lend, private investors? That's another video. That's another strategy. But I want to share some of the deals that I've done where I've used this exact same strategy to make a lot of money. So I focus and I teach people how to find discounted deals and to find and negotiate directly with the sellers. And that's how you can be the very most profitable investor there is by sourcing your own deals. So one of the deals that came through my office that we negotiated, it was a seller. It was a condo here in the same city as my office. It was like 2 minutes away. And this condo, the guy was willing to sell it to me seller finance. It only appraised for about $105,000, and he was getting cash offers at about $60,000. It was rent ready. It wasn't in great condition, but I could rent it for about $1,000 a month. His monthly payment was about $600 a month. So I told him, well, I'll give you a couple $1,000s on top of what you owe, which he owed about $80,000. So I paid about $82,000 for the property. I basically did a seller finance where I paid his mortgage. He deeded the title to me, but I had an agreement that I had 1 year to cash out his financing. So I had a 1-year payment, a balloon payment, to cash out his financing. So as soon as I closed on that property, I went in and made sure it had a nice deep clean. I had my property manager go over and list the property for rent. It took us about 45 days. We found a great tenant. The tenant moved in. I had a 12-month contract. I went to the bank and I said, hey, I would like to refinance this property out of my current financing. I was able to completely pay off the underlying financing that I had, which was about $80,000 within about 4 months. And the seller got cashed out completely. He didn't have to worry about his underlying financing anymore. The financial institution gave me that loan, and I didn't have to give the financial institution any money. So I was able to buy a property for $82,000 and only $2,000 out of my pocket. Percentage-wise, that's about 1% down. So it was very, very good deal. What happened with that property is I actually kept it for 2 years, and then I ended up, it inflated, it went up tons in value, and I ended up selling it for $160,000. So I made a ton of money in rent for 2 years, and then I made even more when I sold it for a large profit. So if you can consistently source the deals and get seller finance or do another deal. So another deal that I had is I found a property that needed a ton of work. I didn't want to deal with traditional financing. So I have connections now, and you can go create these same connections for yourself. So I had someone lend me the money, a private loan, for the property, zero money down because he saw how much equity there was. There was no payments until 12 months. It was interest only, but I had a 12-month balloon. So when I cashed out, I had to pay the interest. So what I did is I went in with his money and purchased this property. Once we got into the property, it did need some work, so I put a little bit of my own money. It ended up being about 5% total of the purchase of the house. We fixed it up. Once it was fixed up, we put a tenant in it, and then I went to the bank and refinanced that traditional financing. I did have to pay the interest as well, but that all went into the traditional financing loan. All of that hard money interest that had accumulated over those 5 months or so, got paid by that traditional financing. So that's the second strategy, is sourcing the deals yourself or paying for the deals with different financing and refinancing it into better interest rates. So that is the two strategies that I've used to acquire properties with very little cash out of my own pocket. So hopefully that's helpful to you. If you have any more questions, make sure you comment below. Make sure you hit that like button, and I look forward to sharing more content with you guys. Talk to you soon.